I'm forging a legendary dagger that sold for $24,000. Get ready to witness the ultimate 100-day build. Sit back, grab some popcorn, and enjoy the journey.
I've got all the steel nice and clean. I'm gonna start stacking these up since they're all ready to go. 1084, then 15 and 20, all the way through.
Once the forge is lit, it's time to get the billet in and start heating it up. I heat the billet to 2,300 degrees.
Okay, first I'm gonna set the welds.
To forge, weld, and draw out this billet, I'm using the 40-ton hydraulic press my dad and I made 16 years ago. I love forging the steel and watching it squish and deform and stretch out, and I love seeing all the scale falling off the billet as I'm forging it out. It's kind of mesmerizing.
I decided we're not making a dagger. Instead, we're gonna make Darth Maul's sword. Oh, I'm gonna break a light. I'm gonna go ahead and get it all marked out, and then we'll cut it up into a bunch of pieces, restack it, get it back in the forge, and we'll be multiplying the layers.
I use a worn out 320 grit belt to clean the end of the billet. It'll leave a fine enough finish that I'll be able to etch it in ferric chloride and actually see how the pattern's looking so far.
That looks good. I think there's maybe a little bit of something left, but that's probably enough. I gotta redo my layout and then go ahead and get this thing cut up into 9 pieces. We're gonna 9 times the layers.
This is where the magic really starts to happen in order for me to reach that 131,000 layer goal. And that's because I'm cutting the billet up into 9 pieces. So you can take the number of starting layers that this billet had and multiply it times 9. And that's how many layers the billet will have once I get this forge welded together again. With every operation, I won't be cutting the billet up into this many pieces, but you can see how the layers can multiply quickly.
I finally have all the pieces cut up and ground clean. They're ready to stack back up. So what we're gonna do is take one, flip it over, take the next one, just set it up on there and alternate. Flip, set, flip, set, flip, set. Duh. Oh, I think it's gonna work. Hopefully stuff can fit in the forge. It's just slightly bigger than this. The noise canceling earbuds do not like welding, making all sorts of weird noises. Got the ends welded up. Next thing I need to do is get a handle on the situation. All right, wire wheel and then Dagger weld.
The wonderful thing about Daggers.
I feel like it's gonna catch and just like, boom.
All the pieces are cleaned up. I'm now TIG welding the billet to seal up every single seam. By sealing up the billet like this, I'll keep oxygen and atmosphere from getting into the billet, which will allow me to have beautifully clean forge welds. It'll take a while to get the forge and billet heated up from a cold start, probably 15 or 20 minutes to get that 2300 degree forge welding temperature that I need. Once the forge welds are set and the billet is solid, I then get more aggressive with the press and draw the billet out. Once you draw out this re-squared billet, cut it up into 4 pieces and stack it up in a particular way, you'll have the foundation of a mosaic pattern. So the re-squaring process can be very powerful in creating a lot of those really cool mosaic patterns.
I've got our billet all cleaned up and cut into 4 equal length pieces. And since we want them to all mirror each other, we're gonna do it like this. Grab the ends, fold them around, and then I can just take this and bring it to the inside towards me. And now all the pieces mirror each other, and this is what a 4-way stack is. I'm gonna be adding in 2 90,000th strips of 1084, and that'll add a dark black stripe in between all these 4 pieces.
get it in the forge, heat it up to really, really hot, 2300 degrees, and then use the squaring dies to forge weld it from every direction at the same time. What's nice about these squaring dies is they push the billet from all four sides at the same time, helping us set the four-way weld. You don't have to have these, but it makes it nice.
The welds are set with our freshly four-wayed billet. It's now time to draw this out. I'm just going to draw it out about 50% of the way, and then we actually need to do that re-squaring process to this billet as well.
I just had my first little sneak peek at how our mosaic's looking so far, and I could not be more pleased with how it's looking. I think it's incredible.
It's time to cut the billet up into 4 equal length pieces and then restack the billet. Once again, we're kind of compounding the mosaic pattern. We're going to do another 4-way on it, and it's going to take all the pattern that's there and multiply it times 4 again. We're kind of building on this 4-way pattern over and over again, and it's getting more and more complex every time we do it. I get the billet heated up, set the welds, and begin drawing the billet out. And just like with the 2 previous forge welding sessions, I'm once again going to re-square the billet. It's going to add some distortion inside the billet that should look really cool.
I cut into the end of the billet and did a little etch real quick to see how the pattern looks. I think it looks amazing. I'm very happy with it. I'm gonna go out on a limb and take a little bit of a risk though. I think we're gonna go ahead and 4-way it one more time.
I don't want the pattern to get too fine, but it's currently looking just a little bit coarser than I want. So it's a bit of a risk, but I think I'm gonna go ahead and get it ground clean, cut it up into 4 pieces, and 4-way it for the final time.
I got the billet cut up into 4 pieces, cleaned them all up, stacked it up, welded it back together, and I've been heating it up in the forge. I need to heat it up a little bit more, and then we'll be able to do the final 4-way on this billet. That's going to take the pattern and put 4 times as many layers in it. I think it's going to look awesome. Let's get this heated up and forge welded together. Got it nice and hot, and go ahead and set the welds. Forge weld this all together, so it's not 4 individual pieces, but instead it's one solid block.
This is the last time I really get to go to town and move a lot of material. This time, however, I'm not going to be turning the billet into a small square. I'm actually going to be forging the billet into a rectangular shape. That's because the next process is going to involve cutting up the entire billet into small tiles on an angle. And for this process to come out correctly in the end, I need the bar to be a rectangular shape instead of a square shape like the last few forging sessions we've done.
I'm going to stick it in vermiculite so it can cool down slowly. That'll make it so I'll be able to bandsaw the blade later on, or the pieces, be able to bandsaw all the pieces easier.
The goal now is to get the pattern from the end of the billet to show up on what will become the sides of the knife. So right here on the ends of all the pieces, I drew a little, just kind of a little rough round circle. That represents our mosaic pattern. And I want you to see how that pattern is gonna go from being on the end of the billet to the sides of the knife as I lay out these tiles. What we're gonna do is start up here with number 1, and I want this surface and this surface to match. So I'm just gonna fold those that way a little bit. Now with number 2, to get 2 and 3 to mirror each other, I want this surface and this surface to match. So I'm just gonna do that. So when I flip this over to what will become the sides of our blade, the main surface on the blade that you're gonna see, now you can see how that mosaic Damascus pattern went from just being on the end of the bar to now the sides of the bar.
I need something to weld the tiles to and seal up the billet. So I'm cutting out some sheet metal with a nibbler. Next, I straighten the sheet metal because the nibbler kind of bends and warps the metal as I'm cutting it. I wire wheel the sheet metal to remove a little bit of the rust and stuff on there just so it's a nice clean surface. And then I begin clamping and TIG welding each tile onto one of the pieces of sheet metal. The sheet metal adds just a little bit of structure to the billet, and it makes it so no oxygen can get into the billet from the two main sides. After both pieces of sheet metal are tacked onto the billet, I seal everything up with the MIG welder.
This billet's ready to go. I'm gonna heat her up nice and piping hot, and then we're gonna gently forge weld it together and start drawing it out into our 16-inch long dagger blade.
Who lives in a pineapple under the sea?
I love having this outdoor grinding area set up. It keeps a lot of the dust down in the shop. This big 5 horsepower angle grinder can create a ton of mess.
Yeah, that's not good.
I am freaking out. I don't know if I've ruined it at this point. I need to let it cool down and inspect it. If you ever overheat a billet, you don't want to forge it while it's overheated. I definitely want to let it cool a little bit and then carefully start forging it.
Yeah, that got way hotter than it should have.
Whew, I think I caught it just in time. I don't see any cracking on the billet. I think we're good. I let the billet cool down just enough before forging it out, and thankfully it didn't crack or start falling apart in the forge. We're done with all the aggressive forging. Our billet has 131,000 layers. I'm actually forging the blade shape in at this point. I'm just taking small, delicate bites on the blade. I don't want to over-forge anything too much since I'm so close to the finish line. If I accidentally have a jitter go through my foot, I could smash the blade way more than I want to just by holding down on the foot pedal of the press for a fraction of a second too long.
The blade's cooled down, so the next thing I want to do is normalize it. To normalize the blade, what I'm going to do is pop it in the heat treating oven, and then I've already set up a program that's going to heat it up to 1600 degrees, let it cool down, heat it up to 1500, let it cool down, heat it up to 1400, and then let it cool down. And that will basically hit the reset button on this steel, and then we continue grinding and stuff after it's gone through all those cycles. Now that the blade's fully normalized, we can go ahead and knock this scale off with the grinder and then start surface grinding. I'm foreseeing a problem. Yep, that's longer than that. The joys of making these massive knives. Looks like we'll have to do it in sections. There. So we'll have to grind that section, scoot it over, grind that little bit of tang, flip it over, grind this section, scoot it over, grind that little bit of tang, and just kind of have an overlapped area.
As I'm surface grinding on the blade, let's enjoy some video of the ventilation system. The ventilation system Dad installed is pretty incredible. We've got pipes running all over the roof like spaghetti, and a giant 5-horse turbo fan outside that sucks all the air through the pipes and keeps the dust down in the shop.
I left our blade in the thick coffee solution overnight, and the pattern is looking incredible. I love how fine the pattern is, but it still has these really bold areas from the thick 15 and 20 that I started the initial billet with. I cannot wait to see how this pattern looks on the finished knife. I think all that fine stuff is gonna add a nice amount of chatoyance to the blade, and then the bold stuff will make it eye-catching from a distance, so we'll have the best of both worlds. Hot in there. All right, ready? Now's the moment of truth. The blade's been soaking at 1525 for a few minutes. It's time to take it out, quickly get it in there, move it up and down to get it hardened nice and smoothly, hopefully. You need to be quick about it. Grab, pull out, quench. Not a lot of room to move it up and down because this tank is at its maximum.
Okay, it's been a couple of minutes. I'm gonna take the blade out, do a little inspection. Okay, it's picked up a bit of a warp. I'm gonna pop it down on the surface grinder magnet. That may or may not straighten it. A lot of warp. You see that? Warped real bad right here.
I'll let it sit on the magnet for 15, 20 minutes, see how it looks. Hopefully the magnet helped with that warpage a little bit. It might have helped a little bit. It's still got quite a bit of warpage right here. We'll see if it got hard. I've got a kind of worn out chainsaw file here. This first portion of the tang down to about here should be rock solid, and then from here out, it should get a little bit softer. The file's digging in really good there, and then as I go this way, it gets harder and harder and harder. I think that's gonna work beautifully. Windshield wipers. Storm. I did a bunch of small things that took a lot of time on the Dagger. Let me take you through all the little things I did. After hardening the blade, I tempered it at 425 degrees. After tempering the blade, I surface ground the sides of it. After surface grinding the blade, I etched it in ferric chloride so I could see the pattern. After etching the steel, I could see the center of the pattern and I scribed a line right down the center of it. The next thing I've been working on is how to mill in the fuller on the blade. I've got the blade all clamped up in the milling machine. This took me quite a while to get it all clamped up how I wanted, but I think we're there. Here we go. I'm gonna start right here. I'm gonna crank the speed up to maximum.
With some of the really small diameter cutters I use, you want them spinning very fast, and having the variable speed plus the ability to go to a higher speed is very handy. So far, this first pass cutting in the fuller feels amazing. My ball end carbide bit is cutting beautifully at this high speed. It's leaving a pretty nice surface finish too. We'll see how it looks when I get all the way down though. I need to make multiple passes, slowly cutting away little bits of material. I'm only going a few thousandths of an inch per pass.
To sand this fuller, I'm gonna be using a technique I discovered last time I did a fuller, and that is to wrap a piece of sandpaper around a long flexible rod and then stick it in the drill and hand sand the fuller that way.
I'm so glad I discovered this method to hand sand the fuller. Before using this method, I used to wrap a piece of sandpaper around a round object that would fit in the fuller and sit there and manually push it around and sand the fuller. With the drill and the rod, the process is cut down to be much, much easier and quicker.
That looks kind of like confetti. I've actually got a bunch of these little pieces that really look like confetti. Whee! Woo! This gives me an idea. I wonder if we could sell knife maker confetti.
Are you a sad knife maker who struggles with being happy? Introducing Knife Maker's Confetti, the confetti that will make any knife maker happy again. You just grab it and throw it in the air. It's that easy.
If you are using or plan on using any other kind of confetti while using Knife Maker's Confetti, check with your doctor first. High dosage may cause mental problems. Wear safety glasses while using Knife Maker's Confetti. Studies have shown large amounts of milling bursts in the Knife Maker's Confetti, and some have reported serious injury to the eye and even blindness. Knife Maker's Confetti is known to cause cancer and even death in the state of California.
So call and order the Knife Maker's Confetti jar today for just $9.99.
I am done sanding on the fuller. That ended up taking quite a bit of time, even using the round rod on the drill. The fuller looks really nice though. I took it all the way up to 2,500 grit. The next thing I want to do is to hog off some material and actually grind in the blade bevels.
This is where the Dagger's really gonna start coming to life. I'm using the corner of a super coarse 36 grit belt to hog away just tons of material here. Once I get the blade bevels ground in, I apply some tape to the fuller so I don't end up grinding it, and then I use the slack belt to convex the edge. The flat grind with a little bit of convex will give me a strong, refined edge later on when I sharpen the Dagger.
The stencil is just transparent enough that I can see through it with enough light. Now I'm adding a bunch of layers of tape. I'll need to lift it up and clean underneath it as I do the electrochemical etching. The stencil basically has cutouts in it, allowing the electrolyte and electricity to go anywhere those cutouts are. There's a fine mesh though that holds the little dots in the center of the R and the O. Otherwise those dots wouldn't have anything to hold all that stuff together and they would just not be there. I'm gonna also use a Variac controller here. This just controls the voltage output. Just got a wire plugged into it and a little full wave bridge rectifier. This changes it from AC to DC power. And then I've got an electrode here, which is just a little piece of steel with a piece of felt on it. And then the other cable gets hooked up to the knife blade itself. Got about 25 volts. We can go ahead and start etching in this name. I'm gonna run it in one place for a few seconds and then kind of overlap and move it over and do the next section. Just double checking to make sure before I take this off because you don't want to have to put it back on. Yep, we're calling that good. I can just let that brass black dry on there for a minute, sand the surface off, and we'll be able to see how the maker's mark looks finished up. And there's my finished maker's mark. It looks very nice. It's nice and deep. It came out very crispy and clean as well. Now that my name's on the blade, I think it's time to take a little break and go stab a bunny. Wow! Whoa, look at the foam inside pouring out. Next up, we've got some diet soda. Ugh. We're gonna charge it with a Mento, supercharge it. Ah! That was a fail. I had the lid on almost all the way and then it and then it dropped. Quick. Whoa! That is getting all over me. I am sticky. The Serenity Dagger, it will stab.
24 hours later.
I'm getting ready to forge the guard out of this massive piece of mild 1018 steel. I need a pattern to follow for this guard, so I laid a piece of paper out over the guard, traced around it, and then cut it out as this little piece here. Then I laid this piece of paper on my anvil, carefully traced around it with a Sharpie, and now I kind of have a general shape that I need to forge this steel to.
I'm using a nice thick bar of 1018 mild steel. After getting the guard forged to the rough shape that it needs to be, I have a little fun at the grinder, getting some of the scale knocked off and cleaning up the sides, and then I hog away some of the excess material on the milling machine too.
Magnet, and the ginormous plate of doom. This thing is awesome because it wraps way around. I guess that's it. And having the ability to wrap around like that is amazing. I can have the piece way over here resting on the work rest and like way over here before the work rest stopped right here and didn't have any support back on the back side here. I've been shaping the profile of the guard for quite a while now, and I'm very happy with how it's looking. The next thing I want to focus on is actually fitting the guard to the blade. So we need to mill a slot out in the guard to make it so it'll fit onto the blade. After hammering the guard on, you can see the outline that we have around the edges. I can go in under the microscope with a high-speed dental burr and carefully remove that material now. The guard fit up came out beautifully. I also went ahead and quickly fit up the front spacer to this, milled out a big old slot in it, did a little bit of filing, got it fitting on there nice and tight. You actually have to use a hammer and tap on the end of the tang in order to remove the front spacer and guard, which is really nice. That way nothing will wibble wobble around. The next thing coming up to do is something that I've been waiting years and years to do, and that's to fit a stone handle to this dagger.
Before I can fit a stone handle, I actually need to go to where the stone is so I can find a nice piece to use on this dagger. So my mom, my brother Josh, and I, we all go to Tucson, Arizona to the Gem and Mineral Show. And there are thousands upon thousands of vendors with tons and tons of different types of stones. It's been a 12-year dream of mine to be able to go to an event like this and hand pick out some beautiful stones for knife handles. It was very overwhelming spending 3 days at this show looking for stones that would make great knife handles. There was so much to look at, so many beautiful different types of stones, and there were even some incredible carvings too.
Take a look at this beautiful piece of labradorite we found. It looks like it's glowing from the inside when you look at it on the right angle.
Mom, Josh, and I made it home safely from the Tucson Gem and Mineral Show, and here is all of our loot, all in one place together. I have so many amazing things here to work with. I cannot wait to get into these and make some stone and or obsidian handles. I absolutely love this purple color. I think it's gonna be an awesome choice for my first ever stone handle. I'm gonna cut it a little extra thick compared to what I would need for wood or something, just because I wanna give myself a little extra wiggle room.
All right, here we go. I am kind of really nervous because I've been looking forward to this moment for so many years that I'm also just, I don't know, my rock might just break in half halfway through the cut.
I'm really praying that this stone doesn't break apart as I go to cut it with the tile saw. The tile saw is probably not quite the right tool to use for this, but it's what I have and I think it'll do the job. I take my time and go extremely slow. I'm mostly worried about the vibrations from the high-speed saw affecting the stone and maybe breaking off a chunk as I cut it.
All right, let's take a look at the inside of this. Wow. Oh, that looks so good. This is awesome.
That is gonna become a handle. I made a little moat around the top with some clay so I can fill it up with water, and I'm just gonna start going to town on this nice and gentle.
Once again, I want to go super slow, super easy. I don't want vibrations from the drilling operation to cause my stone handle to crack in half. Building the clay moat on the end of the handle seems to be working incredibly well. It makes it so my bit can stay submerged in water the whole time I'm drilling without making an incredible mess all over by constantly spraying water on the bit. I do need to add some water every once in a while though, because the hole gets deeper and deeper and the water gets contaminated with a lot of the stone slurry, becomes more of a paste.
I just finished drilling out the handle and did a little bit of sanding and shaping on the ends to square them up. Take a look at this cool little core. We've got a beautiful little sample that came right out of the middle of the handle. Now we can see how the handle fits onto the blade. Okay, I believe it goes this way. There it is. Look at that. My first ever stone handles coming together. It fits so tight up against the front spacer. Can't see any daylight in any of the corners. This is awesome. It's now time to move on to the pommel. I'm over at the lathe with a big old chunk of steel to make the pommel out of. I'm gonna work on the end of the pommel first. So this part right here is gonna be the top. I'm done shaping the pommel for now. It took me a little while on the lathe, but I got it very, very similar to my sketch, and I'm super happy with how it looks. The next thing I need to do before we can screw the entire handle assembly together is to thread the tang. wanna make sure I try to get this started nice and square. Square, do the monkey walk around it. Like square, square. If it's not square, then it's probably too late now to do anything about it anyway. We're so close to being able to screw all the handle components together and see how everything fits. And then bed the handle in epoxy so it goes to the exact same place every time. So right now the handle fits somewhat loosely on the tang, and it'll fit like a glove after I'm done with it. And now, ladies and gentlemen, for the moment you've all been waiting for. Need to inspect which way this goes. Assemble the handle. The pommel should screw right on. Wow, the whole handle's assembled for the first time. Okay, it's assembled, that's one thing, but let's see how everything fits. It fits beautifully tight. It fits wonderful. This is awesome. This is really awesome. It's coming together. The next thing I need to do is get the handle bedded in epoxy so it goes to the exact same position every time. Now I'm gonna mix up some really high quality West System epoxy that's gonna cure slowly overnight. Fill her up. Wipe off some of this excess epoxy here. I think I got the handle assembled where I want it. I'm gonna let this sit for 3 to 6 hours, take everything off, put it back together, and let it cure overnight.
Many hours later.
The bedding of the handle is finished, and now the handle fits onto the tang and indexes to the same spot every single time, exactly the same. Now that the handle's bedded in epoxy and goes back to the same exact spot every single time, I can begin shaping the stone handle.
Once again, just like with every operation of this stone, I want to take everything extremely slow and extremely careful. I really don't want to break my handle in half at this point because I was trying to grind too aggressively and maybe got things too hot or had too many vibrations go through. So I've invested a fair amount of time getting the handle cut and fit to the dagger. I don't want to have to start over right now. But you never know, that's just part of working with stone, I think, is that there's more of a risk that your handle could just break in half at any point during the construction. Normally with wood or mammoth ivories or fossilized walrus ivories, that's not really much of a concern to where your handle's gonna break in half. I mean, it can happen, but with stone, I think it's gonna be a much more of a risk factor. And that's part of what adds to the beauty of the stone too, is that you're working with more of a risky material, so the reward in making it through the entire process is also a little bit higher. With great risk comes great reward. After the handle's shaped, I move on to polishing the stone. I found it was difficult with this type of stone to get the sheen I wanted without getting orange peel texture on the stone. So I had to try a bunch of different types of polishing belts and compounds and diamond and all sorts of different things in order to finally settle on a finish that I was happy with.
At this point, the stone portion of the handle is officially done, and I am in love with it. I cannot believe how beautiful this charrite came out. It's got this swirly purple and white and silver, and there's so much texture and so much variety going on all over in the handle. Just turning it, you have so many different things to look at. You've got all these really cool like black inclusions over on this side, and then on this side it's got this like extra silvery swirly stuff. I am in love with this handle, and I cannot wait to do more stonework because this was very, very rewarding to do, and it came out better than I could have imagined. I got the layout done on the top portion of my guard here. Got some nice lines I can follow. The next thing we need to do is start cutting the grooves for the gold itself. To the engraving room.
I'm trying to be very careful with my graver. This is a very wide graver because I want some big, thick 24 karat gold inlays in this dagger. I think they'll look incredible. But because this graver is so wide, it means I'm cutting away a ton of material. And if I slip or cut a groove in the wrong place, I'll have a big, nasty, wide groove where there wasn't meant to be one. Once I get the groove cut into the proper depth, I then dovetail the sides of the groove.
The next thing we're gonna use is some really thick 32 thousandths diameter gold wire. This is 24 karat. I need to anneal it first to make sure it's nice and soft. We want the gold as soft as we can get it so it'll squish into the groove easier. And I also need to make a little tiny ball on the end. Just by melting it, it'll give me a little bit more material for when the wires meet up with each other. I'll be able to blend that seam in and make it invisible. So I like to form a ball just with heat.
The gold is relatively soft compared to all the metal around it, and just seeing it smash and deform into the grooves is so satisfying. I also love how the seam where one gold piece ends and the next piece starts blends in and is invisible on the finished product. One of the trickiest parts about doing gold inlay is trying to get the groove just the right depth. You don't want it too shallow, otherwise you might end up sanding through your gold and expose the bottom of the groove, but you also don't want the groove too deep, because if the groove's too deep, your gold might not fill it in properly, so there's a Goldilocks middle ground that's just right, and I'm always striving to hit that perfect level of depth in the groove.
I finished hand sanding the surface of the guard, got the gold and the guard all nice and flat and flush, got everything cleaned up. The gold looks very nice. I couldn't be much more pleased with how this came out. It is now ready to ferric chloride etch so we can finally see the mosaic pattern that I made. I've got the blade cleaned off really well, got a wire to hang it on. I'm gonna go ahead and soak it in the ferric chloride solution right here, and that's gonna etch the 1084 steel and leave the 15N20 steel nice and bright. Whoa, that looks so good. Oh, it's so fine, but yet coarse. It's got a really good concentration of really fine W's mixed in with a bunch of coarse stuff too. And a whole bunch of these cool little flowery petal looking things. Now that the blade is etched and coffee darkened, there's one more area of the knife I need to focus my attention on, and that's the fittings. They still have a 220 grit finish on them. I need to get that all the way up to 3000 grit so I can buff them and gun blue them. I'm gonna jump right in and start sanding on the guard. Said it before and I'll say it again, it looks good when it's wet. I don't think it's touching anything. And we're gonna go directly into the boiling water to neutralize the salts for about 10 minutes. The parts have been boiling for a while. I'm gonna get them out of the boiling water and put them directly into some water displacing oil and leave them in there pretty much overnight.
I asked many knife makers what one thing they wish they could instantly be great at, and most of them said heat treating. So I created a free mini course called 3 Steps to Heat Treating Consistent Knife Blades. Discover the formula I use for my high-end knives and start creating your own high-performance blades using inexpensive tools. Click the link in the description to join now.
The bluing came out beautifully. I couldn't have asked for the bluing to come out any better. It looks so even, so jet black. Beautiful dark black mirror finish on the pieces. I cannot wait to get this knife together. It is so close. We have one more thing we need to do before we can do the final assembly, and that is to sharpen this dagger. Can we just skip to the part where it's razor sharp? Man. Look how much edge there is on this thing. It's all edge. So it'd be like me sharpening one edge that's that long. All right. Okay, nothing looks ruined yet. It is finally time to assemble this dagger. Guard, front spacer. Handle. Pommel. Tighten. After months of working on it, the Serenity dagger is finally done. This thing came out so good. This is probably one of my all-time favorite pieces, just because the stone handle, oh, it feels really good. The stone handle didn't end up being that heavy. I thought the stone handle would be a lot heavier, but I went for a real skinny profile just so I wouldn't end up with a handle that was too heavy, and I left the blade a little extra thick to help compensate for that. The balance point came out very, very nice. It balances right here, right in front of the ricasso, right where the blade edge starts. That feels wonderful. I really like this fuller, how it runs down into the guard. I've never done that before, having a fuller just disappear under the guard like that. I love the front spacer shape, that real curvy front spacer, and this extra dramatic pommel, how it just swells out and gets really large at the end. I love the handle shape. I probably went more extreme on this handle shape than any handle I've ever done. It starts out pretty big up here, big oval shape, and then it gets really skinny and turns into this nice round shape on the other end for the pommel. It came out so good. The Damascus is really pretty. There's a little chatoyance to the blade when you move it around in the light, especially bright light. It looks amazing in the sun. This thing is so nice. My biggest regret with this dagger is just not jumping in and doing a stone handle sooner, because this came out so cool. So if you've got something you want to try, don't hesitate as long as I did for stone handles, 12 years. Just jump in there and give it a shot. I will see you in the next video. May the forge be with you. Bye-bye.